Senators, when the Senate rose, the Companies Amendment Bill was passed. We now continue with the remaining bills on the order paper. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment.
Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow this bill to go through its remaining stages at the city.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I beg for second reading of a bill shortly entitled Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment. Madam President, you will find that this bill in some ways is similar in terms of objective as previous bills that we passed during the course of today. In this case, this bill is seeking to put into existence or to be in compliance with recommendation 37 of the FATF, which I referred to previously, the Financial Action Task Force report, and recommendation 37 specifically speaks to some of the international best practices that inclusive of what this bill intends to address. In that regard, Madam President, it really calls for collaboration between St. Lucia and other jurisdictions or other countries within the Commonwealth, as used to be, to render assistance and collaborate, and also to cooperate on matters of mutual interest, if you put it this way. The proposed amendment, Madam President, will allow St. Lucia to not only collaborate with countries within, but countries outside the Commonwealth. This is the essential difference in this particular bill and what the amendment seeks to achieve. So you will find that during the course of the, when we go to committee stage, you will realize that everywhere we have countries of the Commonwealth that, or within the Commonwealth, it will now include countries outside. So this is fundamentally what this bill intends to do. We would expect that the relationship will be what we call mutual, in that while we would seek to assist and cooperate with countries where we comply, that they would reciprocate in that regard. So the reciprocity, yes, is expected, and I think that's a basic principle of this bill. So I look to the blessing and the approval of this Senate for the passage of the amendments to this particular bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment Bill be read a second time. Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, my colleagues would have, by their silence, indicate that they probably believe, like I do, that this is a necessary piece of amendment, which is pretty much routine and will be in good standing for us. And so I thank them for silently indicating that.
Senators, the question is that the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act, Cap 3.03.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Substitution of long title.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 1.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 2.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 6.
Amendment of Part 7.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 7.
Substitution of Section 28.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 8.
Repeal of Section 29.
Clause 8 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 9.
Amendment of Principal Act.
Clause 9 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. I think the ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This Act may be cited as the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment Act 2023.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Extradition Amendment.
Extradition Amendment.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow this bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg for to move for the second reading of a bill shortly entitled Extradition Amendment. Madam President, this bill really is seeking to satisfy another of the recommendations of the FATF, which I mentioned earlier. And in this case, it makes reference to recommendation 39 of that particular report. As we would have established by now, that particular recommendation calls for a number of amendments and a number of decisions and actions to be taken. And in this case, it is really with regard to extradition. Now, there are some implications when we look at it in a broader sense, given our jurisdiction, our laws, our position on certain criminal activities as compared to other nations or countries with whom we may wish to or we may need to cooperate. In that case, Madam President, there are some expectations, and I think we would have to be sensitive to that. Like we do with trade and other multi and bilateral cooperation agreements or arrangements, we expect, like I mentioned in the previous bill, that countries with which we engage in extradition will reciprocate. But we have to also bear in mind the conditions and the legal implications, because in certain countries or jurisdictions, we may find that some of the laws on their books are not exactly as it is with ours. And one very controversial one, Madam President, would be when it refers to, or with regard to, the death penalty, which is still on our books. And so that takes me to the point about the provisions in the Act that generally, or that relates to the death penalty. And it says here, the bill amends the Act to prevent the restriction of the extradition of a fugitive who is likely to be punished by the death penalty when the offense is not punishable by death in St. Lucia. So it really, raises an interesting argument in that regard, because in that case you may have a situation where your laws in your books are not exactly reflective of the same of the laws in the books of the country with who you have to sort of exchange with, basically, where you have to have somebody extradited to, or you have to receive someone from. And so we would need to be mindful of these, what it may call for as a region, for example, because of our proximity, Martinique, St. Vincent, Jamaica, Barbados, it may be more likely that that kind of request will be made more often because of proximity, because people move, as you know, we're islands and there's a lot of movement by water, people moving around, and so it could mean that there may be more of a need for that kind of collaboration between countries of the region. But mind you, Madam President, within the region, even then, we have situations where there are slight variations in the legislation. And so we have to keep that in mind, because some of the implications we may have to deal with. So as we seek to do so, which is a recommendation, as I said, 39 of that report, we need to ensure that some of the requirements that are there for extradition, especially those committed in your country where there are conditions that exist elsewhere that are not the same as yours, that these considerations are taken. So, Madam President, I think in one way, if we have to look at maybe one of the positives of that bill, is that it really is a step towards strengthening our security and our safety. There will be other actions that we will have to take to complement it, particularly with our borders. But in itself, this bill will not solve all the problems of movement of criminal activity and criminals, but it gives us a medium through which we can collaborate and cooperate with other countries in terms of receiving or, if we want to say, transferring persons who need to be prosecuted for criminal activity. I hope it finds favor with the Senate and that we can pass, we can make the amendments and pass this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that the extradition amendment bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as, no, that's not. Senator Fady.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Sorry for the mix-up. Maybe I put on my mic a bit too late. I just want to make a few comments here on this rather important bill, which I do believe is going to strengthen our international cooperation with a lot of our traditional allies as we seek to join the international community in an effort to ensure that we can improve global security and cooperation among ourselves. Madam President, it's quite intriguing that our laws only made allowance for there to be extradition treaties between us and countries within the Commonwealth region. And so I find this intriguing because 44 years of history and us having a long-standing tradition of cooperating with a number of our traditional allies, like the US, for example, the EU. One that I note very well is the great success we've had with the United States and the Shipwright Agreement, for example, where that treaty allows the US ships coming into Caribbean waters to intercept drug traffickers moving through the region, and a US vessel, for example, security vessel, can intercept those illicit activities that are plying our waters. So I find it intriguing that given that spirit of cooperation, given that spirit of mutual bond and friendship which we have shared, despite which administration is at the helm of the government, that we are only now able to do this. So this is game-changing. This is going to expand our ability to cooperate better with the international community. And I do support this bill, Madam President, in principle, and really believe that it's going to help in our own efforts to ameliorate our own crime situation. This can even act as a deterrent to criminals in St. Lucia who may be wanted by the United States, St. Lucia nationals, for crimes that they may have committed against US citizens or crimes that they have committed on US soil. We note with interest, Madam President, that the most publicized extradition case we have seen within CARICOM in recent history happens to be that of Douglas Cook. And that, Madam President, would have raised a number of issues for Caribbean countries. A lot of issues emerged then. We note that upon the request, when the Jamaican government was contemplating whether to issue the extradition or not, there was a lot of commentary and there was a lot of speculation. The pundits were commenting rather whether such a grant to a request would strain the relations between Jamaica and the US if the request was not granted, for example. So it then places a significant burden of decision making on the country that's receiving the request from the country requesting such an extradition. So you then, as the country on the receiving end of the request, may then have to consider your relationship with that institution, with that country that is sending a request or making a request for the extradition to take place. And then it leaves you now to make a very conscious decision in the best interest of all parties. There's the rights of the person in question that you must consider. Then there is the whole issue of your future relationship with that country that may want to. So it's a very, very, very sensitive matter, and can be one that can cause a strained relationship between countries. So, however, it is good that it's here. It is good that we're expanding. It is good now we're able to have extradition treaties with countries within the EU. We're able to now have extradition treaties with the United States. That is just on our doorstep. And other countries outside of the Commonwealth. So very, very important step. And I want to say that we on this side, we actually commend this legislation and we support this bill. But the ramifications for the local crime scene in St. Lucia, this really does have grave implications for criminal elements in St. Lucia, in that now it's not just an extradition treaty with a CARICOM country or a country that is within the Commonwealth. They can now face the rest of the world, and it has very, very grave implications for them. The leader of government business sought to clarify the section that deals with Section 8 of the amendment, which actually deals with where it appears to the Attorney General that a fugitive would likely to incur the death penalty for the extradition crime for which his or her surrender under this act is sought, the Attorney General may refuse to order the surrender of the fugitive where no assurance satisfactory to the Attorney General is given by the Commonwealth country or foreign state that if the fugitive is surrendered, the death penalty would not be imposed, or if imposed, will not be carried out. So here, this allows the Attorney General to refuse without being given that assurance that that person will be protected from the death penalty or any such penalty. However, when I look at our own books, this sort of sends a different message. The death penalty is still on ours. And I'm sort of asking myself, why would we need to protect an individual from the death penalty if we're not going to clear it up ourselves? If we're not going to take a position in our own legislation to say, well, St. Lucia no longer supports the death penalty, and so therefore, when it comes to granting an extradition of someone, that we want the assurance that that person will not come under such a severe penalty of the death penalty. To me, this is a bit hypocritical, and it sends mixed messages. I would like some clarity from the leader of government business when he speaks to this, but certainly I think that in terms of the signal we're sending in this amendment and what exists in our books, they are saying two different things. So if I can understand the rationale for ensuring that the fugitive, that we are given the assurance that the fugitive will not face the death penalty, and this is going to be a condition under which we grant the extradition or not, sends some mixed policy signals there, and I would certainly like the leader of government business to clarify that in his response later on. But all in all, Madam President, I don't have too many qualms here. I do know that when extradition is spoken of, people sometimes get very, very nervous, because then they say to themselves, well, boy, we don't only face a local system, but we face a global system with a lot more sophistication and a lot more capacity now to be able to try us and to deal with the crime that they would have committed in a more sophisticated way. So this is very, very interesting that this legislation is coming at a time. I will continue to monitor its progression, and I thank you very much for your time, Madam President.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam President. Just some very, very brief comments on the bill. In reading through it and looking at the sections and the proposed amendments, I realized that what is being done in most of the cases is, I want to say clarification, but they've removed some of the elements that exist now. I guess the intention being to make it easier to extradite persons from St. Lucia. Whereas in theory, I have no objection to that, and I definitely have no issue with making it easier to enter into extradition agreements with various countries in the world. So the removal of the requirement for Commonwealth, being a member of the Commonwealth, I have no difficulty with that at all. I do wonder about the section that the leader of opposition business was discussing a while ago, which is section 5, amendment to section 8, but not for the reasons he was raising. As I see it, the amendment is now being made to remove what existed before, which was that one of the conditions or one of the reasons that he could have refused, the Attorney General could have refused the extradition, was the fact that the offense was not punishable by death in St. Lucia. I don't, and to me that's what should remain. I don't know why we should be overly enthusiastic to extradite persons from St. Lucia to face the death penalty overseas. I note that it does require that he can ask for assurances, but as I see it, it was not that he was prevented previously, from permitting an extradition when the person faced the death penalty, but it's just that at least you would like to understand that the person was under similar jeopardy in St. Lucia had they committed the offense here. Which leads me to my real issue with this bill. It is removing what is known as dual criminality, which is a traditional principle underlying extradition, that the offense that you're being extradited for must have been an offense in your country or similarly punishable in your country. Maybe not equally, but the fact is it had to be something that, had you done it in your country, would have been a crime. I notice as well that under the definition of extradition crime under Part 3, it has also removed the requirement of any intention or any, get the exact wording. So previously under Section 3 of the Extradition Act, you could only be extradited for a crime that was, as I indicated, would have been punishable if committed in St. Lucia, and would have been a crime where the description contained a reference to any intent or state of mind on the part of the person committing the offense. My worry is, as has been my worry with most of the legislation we've dealt with today, is that we have a situation where countries external to St. Lucia are trying to reach their tentacles into St. Lucia. Basically what this means then in practice is that you could be extradited for something that you've done that is not punishable in St. Lucia, and you had no clue was a crime where you were doing it. And especially since there's no requirement of an intention, inadvertently you can fall afoul of the legislation externally that you have no idea of. And for me that is an important consideration, because a fundamental aspect of criminal law is that it must be published, it must be known, so that I know what a crime is, so I know I can order my affairs to make sure that I don't fall afoul of it. If, as this legislation intends, it means that treaties can be entered with the entire world, it means that somehow I have to become aware of all the criminal legislation the world over, which is an impossibility. And it means, as I said, because there's no requirement of intention, there's no requirement of knowledge, I can fall afoul of laws in other countries that have extraterritorial jurisdiction with no intention of my part to offend those or contravene those laws. And for me, that is a serious issue. I know a lot of the larger developed countries, or I should say metropolitan countries, are pushing these sorts of laws because it's in their interests. They have the ability to investigate, they have the ability to prosecute these crimes. And so oftentimes persons will fall foul of these crimes without even intending to. And that is the one note of caution that I want to sound in relation to this bill and in relation to making these sorts of amendments, that we are jeopardizing our local citizens who may be doing things inadvertently. And it may be simple things, for example, like copying songs off the internet, which may be punishable for copyright infringement for a lot more severe terms in a foreign country than we know. And we may be doing it innocently, inadvertently, and fall afoul of that. Just a very bad example, but I just wanted to raise a possibility of something that you may be doing and not even realize it's a crime, because it's something that we do every day and it's not necessarily punishable here, or not necessarily punishable to the extent that it may be overseas. So that is my one issue with the legislation, and thank you for allowing me to raise it.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, it's sometimes very good to have legal minds in this chamber to add some, certain perspectives on legislation. In fact, we are legislators, and legislation sometimes can be synonymously used with law. So whenever there are matters that have legal implications, I always welcome the legal person's opinions to share some light. Now, there are a couple of things that I noted in the presentations of both the members who spoke, and I think I had also done some reflection on them as well. The first one, I think I need to perhaps provide some clarification to the assertion that was made by the leader of Government Business with regard to something about hypocrisy in our laws having the death penalty on the books, and then the AG may not necessarily decide to grant the extradition if what the person has done is punishable by the death penalty. I think the principle there is really about the offense and not necessarily what's on the books. If you've done something and the offense is punishable by the death penalty in St. Lucia, that's where the AG, it's not whether you have the law on your books, but is the offense punishable? So I think it's really about the offense. Now, there's also the argument that you can do something abroad as a St. Lucian and ask what's correct without, not intentionally trying to break the law. But again, I think there's a basic principle about ignorance of the law being no excuse. I'm no legal expert, but I think that's a basic principle by which we live. And I remember this famous case in Singapore with this American who had to be flogged, I think, for chewing gum, stuff like that. When you enter, I think it's something that gives us another opportunity as a country. We need to be willing to encourage our people to educate themselves. If you decide to jump on a plane or a boat or find yourself in someone else's country, it is your responsibility to learn, find out what their laws are before you do certain things, so that the hand of the law is not going to be, you're not going to be spared because you didn't know. I think it's a general principle. Now, while I believe it is true that it would not be fair for someone to have to face a consequence that was that they didn't mean to cause an offense against, but I believe that this tells us something. It tells us that we need to get with it. We need to become more aware of what happens in the rest of the world. We do not exist in a vacuum. And when we decide to venture into other people's territory, we need to be mindful of their laws. So I wanted to ensure that the leader of opposition business was not misguided based on what he mentioned when I made reference to the death penalty. It really is whether the offense was punishable in St. Lucia, but it's the offense and not whether that there is death penalty on our books. So nobody should have to face death penalty elsewhere. It's the offense. There are some offenses that are, and there are some offenses that are not. So I think just like we did with the previous bill, some of those bills I suspect before the end of this term or before too long may also have to be reviewed given the implications that they have. But generally, I think the intention is to help us manage the movement of criminal elements, and in some cases it could become a blessing in disguise for some countries who may not have the capacity to handle the types of activities that go on. And when persons who are found guilty, for example, persons who migrate into our country and introduce all kinds of things, that sophisticated crime that we are not able to actually deal with, we can be graciously saying, thank you very much. Maybe in your homeland, they are better equipped to take care of you, and you're not going to sit in our prisons where we have to spend money to feed you and to take care of you, and we do not have the capacity to deal with you in the way that we should. That is a positive side of it. I'm hoping that we don't have to do this because we can strengthen our own systems. But I think I appreciate the level of discussion that we had on this particular bill, and I hope that in doing so, we will see the benefits when it becomes a law. I thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that the extradition amendment bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Extradition Act, Cap 2.10.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Substitution of Section 3.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 6.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 8.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 6.
Amendment of Section 39.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the Extradition Amendment Bill went through committee without amendments. Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Extradition Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's most excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This Act may be cited as the Extradition Amendments Act 2023.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do stand adjourned, sign it out.
Before I pose the question, I wish to extend thanks to Senator Shelton Daniel and Senator Nancy Charles for your contribution to the Senate session today. Thank you so much. Senators, the question is that this House do stand adjourned sine die. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
All rise.
Well, we have come to the end of the sitting of the Senate today, the 23rd day of March 2023. The bills, mainly the bills for discussion today were the credit reporting, registration of supervised entities, anti-terrorism amendment, companies amendment, mutual assistance in criminal matters amendment, and extradition amendment. All of these bills were discussed and passed by the Senate today. And of course, what was notable was the appointment of temporary senator on the opposition side, Senator Nancy Charles. And of course, last week we had the appointment of Senator Shelton Daniel, the President of the Senate, thanking them for their contributions. Very lively debate indeed, and it went quite smoothly. Créole Magadi venu au bout session Sénat là aujourd'hui avec atteint 6 différents bills qui discutaient avec pas pièces difficultés avec ce Sénat là nous teni appointement sénateur Nancy Charles qui parlait, représentait, enfin il prend place à sénateur Ferropolius qui part présent avec il fait en contribution aujourd'hui. Il était bien intéressant avec comme ça nous déjà tout bout avec Issa Makwadi qu'on Madame Présidente dit, il y a ajouté encore peut-être, nous pas ça dit peut-être, nous espérer, puisque l'autre session qui va venir tout de suite la semaine prochaine. Et puis ça, je vous remercie un peu pour SCP. Nous, non, Winston Springer qui passe ici en finissement, mais quand même, il était là quand même, avec ses techniciens et travail GIS. Nous avons remercié un peu pour SCP nous, avec nous avons passer pour studier nous en GIS.